Hello, everybody, and welcome to Good Stuff. I'm pumped up today to have our guest with us, Alan Stein. It's been, as we were just talking off air here a little bit, it's been a long time since we've seen each other. Maybe we'll get into that trip a little bit, but nonetheless, I've stayed in touch here. And Alan spent 15 years as a basketball performance coach with a lot of people. I think you'll know Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, Kobe Bryant. He now teaches people these same strategies that these elite athletes, use at the world class level. And I'm really looking forward to diving into his book a little bit today, Raise Your Game. Alan, welcome to the show.
Oh, it's so nice to connect with you, man. It has been a long time, and it's good to see your face.
Yeah, I think we were discovering it was maybe 2006 or 2007 down in Jamaica. I was doing some recruiting, and you were leading the troops down there, so really enjoyed that. I know there's a lot of people that know about you and what you do, and just to maybe reiterate to them, and even for some of the people that don't know, how about you just share with us a little bit of what that is, please, from way back then until now.
Well, I'll even go back a little bit further. I think to put it in proper context, basketball was my first identifiable passion, and I fell in love with the game at probably 4 or 5 years old. And I'm so thankful that here 4 decades later, basketball is still a major part of my life. And, you know, I played through high school and college, and then in college started to develop an equal love for the performance side, the training and the strength and conditioning and fitness. So when I graduated, decided that I would be a basketball performance coach and help players improve their athleticism and bulletproof their bodies against injury, and did that mostly at the youth and high school level for almost 20 years, but had some opportunities, as you mentioned, to work with some elite level players at some elite level events. And then 4 years ago, I made a very distinct pivot to take everything I had learned through the game and through these players and through coaches like yourself and apply those to the business world and help sales professionals and executives and entrepreneurs have the same mindsets, disciplines, routines, and rituals that elite athletes have. So now, by definition, I'm a keynote speaker and an author.
Right. Well, I love it. You're going to be speaking my language today. So let's dig into some of these topics that you talk about. The first one being what the high performers do during the unseen hours. I think I have a great appreciation for this as a former coach. I would call this winning in the dark,
Yes.
Putting in the time when nobody is watching, so you've earned the right when everybody is watching. Am I safe in saying that's what you mean? And can you dive into it a little bit more?
Absolutely. You nailed it perfectly. And I actually like that in the dark, because that's really what the unseen hours are. And really in any area of life, the unseen hours, the training and the preparation is what sets the foundation for the game or the performance. And it doesn't matter if you're talking about basketball or sales, it's the work you do leading up to it. I mean, you even know as a coach, even on a granular level, as a shooter, a good portion of your work is done before you even touch the ball. As far as your footwork and your balance and making sure that you're going to be lined up to the basket and that you're in rhythm and in range, a good portion of it is done before you even get there. So this mindset of there's performance and there's preparation, and we're always kind of dancing between the two. But the unseen hours is where basketball players are made. And you know that as a coach as well as anyone. And those that would commit to mastery of the fundamentals during those unseen hours would come closer to maximizing their potential than anybody else.
Yeah, and two things in there too. I would say that embracing boredom, which I'll talk about maybe a little bit, and then doing it on the days that you don't feel like doing it. And I'm not saying that what we do when you have a passion for it's not boring, but I think the process. So, can you speak to that a little bit? Do you see some of that stick out with some of these elite people?
Well, yeah, and usually the basics and the fundamentals are mundane and they are monotonous and they can get boring if you allow them to get boring. So I think part of it is, do you have the creativity and innovation and imagination to take something that is routine and could be construed as boring? And is there any way that you can add some fun to it? Is there any way you can add a challenge to yourself or a competition to make it more fun? But then even more than that is you also, as you just said so perfectly, you have to love the process. So you may not love doing that set of drills, but you're going to love the result that you'll get from doing that set of drills. So if you plan on hitting the game-winning shot when there's 2 seconds left, well, you had to have taken thousands and thousands and thousands of that exact shot in an empty gym in order to earn the right to take that shot. So it really is cause and effect. And I think the best players do a combination of both. They find a way to make the boring more fun, and even when it's not the most fun thing in the world, they're so attached to what that will allow them to do that they're willing to go through it.
Yeah, for sure. That's great. How about you tell the story that I know I've heard and read from a couple other people, but yourself with Kobe, when you had the opportunity to join him early in the gym just to observe, like kind of walk people through that, because I think, and I don't want to throw anybody under the bus here, but I don't think sometimes people understand and appreciate how hard these guys really work. I know they make it look easy, but give us that behind the scenes look into that story. Could you please?
Well, what I'll do is I'll give you kind of the condensed version of it, and then at the end I'll make sure I give you a link that folks can go actually watch me tell it when I'm on stage in front of a live audience. It'll probably do it more justice than
Perfect.
now. But you just said something so perfectly, which is they make it look so easy during the performance, and that is because of those unseen hours. That's because of the thousands of hours in the dark training that they can make it look so easy. And what I find very interesting is, I know at the time of this recording, the NBA is on hold, so there are no games at present. But if we just imagine for a second that it was playoff time and Steph Curry was healthy and the Golden State Warriors made the playoffs and he plays tonight and drops 60 points on somebody and has 14 threes, most people would look at that and either think he was lucky or think that he was, he was born with all of that talent. And they actually disrespect the fact that he has taken so many game shots from game spots at game speed that he has earned the right to score 60. In fact, that's what he's supposed to do. It actually, and I mean this as the highest form of a compliment, it becomes less impressive when you realize how much work went into that. When someone makes a million shots over the course of their life, they should be able to score 60 points when they get in the game. And again, I don't say that to diminish that. That's still an incredible achievement. But as you said so perfectly, I don't think people understand the level not only of effort, but of focus, of purposeful repetitions, of consistency. It's not just getting in the gym when you want to or you feel like it. It's getting in the gym every single day. And that really was the lesson that I had learned from Kobe back in 2007 when I got a chance to watch him work out early one morning. I was shocked at how simple and basic the drills were that he was doing. And he was doing them at an unparalleled level of intensity, and he was doing them with surgical precision, but the actual drills were no different than drills you and I have done with high school players before. And here at the time, he was the best player in the world. And I asked him later at camp, why he was doing such basic drills. And he was the one that looked me in the eye and said, the reason I'm good is because I don't get bored with the basics. And that really was a light bulb moment for me as a young coach. And I've carried that with me ever since, that falling in love with the basics and respecting and appreciating the fundamentals is the key to mastery of anything.
Yeah, so good. Yeah, so good. And when you say early, I don't think people realize how early, Alan. But
Yeah.
next I know is unbeatable teams, and creating championship cohesion and accountability and culture and a big buzzword. But I think everybody can relate to this. All these things that you're talking about right now are businesses. There's teams. It's at home, whether it's with my family. So tell us a little bit more about this, would you please?
Sure. I look at culture as the alignment or the disalignment of beliefs and behavior. Most groups have a vision and they have a mission and they have a goal, and that's what they believe. But then you have to see, is their behavior in alignment with that? Is it congruent with that? Is it in harmony, or is it going in the other direction? I mean, you can talk all you want about winning a championship, and then if you show up to practice and you see poor work habits and you see bad communication and you see awful body language and you see people showing up late and people going through the motions, well, that's a weak culture because your belief and your behavior are not in alignment. So that's really the key. And I'm a big believer, whether in sports or in business, that the truest test of an organization or a team's culture is how everyone behaves when the head coach isn't there or when the CEO isn't there. If you're coaching a team and you decide not to show up for practice as the head coach, what would that team do in your absence? Would they just go home and be thankful for a day off? Or would someone step up and say, you know what, we're going to have a practice. Here's some drills that I think coach would do with us and try to do them to the best of their ability. Because if you have groups that have very minimal slippage when the head person's not around, I think that's an example of, or the epitome of, a really strong culture.
Yeah, for sure. That's great. What are some minor things that maybe someone can do if they're a leader in a leadership position, on a daily basis that can contribute to that workplace culture, that team culture? And I'll follow up with another one, but what would be some of the things that you would say right off the bat they could do to enhance that?
Well, the number one thing a leader needs to do is to care. They need to care about their team. They need to care about the players or the employees. They need to care about the organization as a whole, or the university, or the community. I mean, they have to truly care. And then to go above and beyond that, they can't just say that they care. They have to actually show people that they care. And you show people you care in a variety of different ways. One of the best is giving them your time and your undivided attention. It's spending quality time with them and looking them in the eye, whether in person or virtually, like we have to resort to now, but it's giving them that time, and it's listening. It's caring about what's important to them. It's listening to their needs and their challenges and their pain points. It's having the emotional intelligence to give them what they need to continue to improve. So it all starts with that. So anything that a leader or a coach can think of that will help build that trust and that care factor, well, that's going to increase buy-in and believe in with the team. And I believe that's the foundation to which everything else is built. So as a coach, your players have to know that you care about them as a human being first, and as a basketball player second, or as a human being first and a sales professional second. So it always will start with caring.
I wish I could go back and talk to my 25-year-old self with that one. And, I was talking to Larry Shine the other day, who's, coaching icon. And that's, I said that to him. I feel like one of the best attributes some of these best leaders have is they're so present. They're so engaged and locked in when I'm with them. Is that something you see as well, alluding to your point?
Absolutely. I firmly believe time is our most precious resource because it's finite. Whenever it's over, it's over. Yeah. But our attention in the present moment is the number one currency that we have. Our attention in the present moment is the number one gift we have to offer another human being. Because when we give our attention in the present moment, we're giving them some of our time. And that's not something that we can ever get back. So we want to be very intentional about giving our full focus and attention to the people we care about most. And, that's where the quality of time ends up being more important than the quantity of time. And it's also about being fully present with what you're doing. I mean, yes, we are speaking virtually right now, but you and I are both fully present in this conversation. I'm not folding laundry and you're not checking email. Like, we're both fully present because we believe that's a sign of respect to the other person. And in a very digital and distracted world, pandemic aside, that sometimes can get blurred and people don't give the attention to those that they care about most as often or as well as they should.
Yeah, for sure. That's beautiful. So what would you say, I guess, as a follow-up with some of these culture points that we're making, what are some mistakes that you are seeing consistently that leaders make, that teams are making, that are hurting them to even have a chance to build that culture?
Well, a couple. One is they don't clearly define the roles on the team. There's some ambiguity and role clarity, that every single person on the team needs to know what their role is. They need to accept and embrace that role. They need to try and star in that role, and they need to know how they fit into the bigger picture. Like, why is your role important to the rest of us? Why is what you're going to do important for us to accomplish the goal that we have? And I guess even before that, I should say, make sure you're crystal clear on the goal or the mission or the metric or whatever. And then once you do that, make sure that everyone knows how they fit in. If we keep using basketball, the platform that brought you and I together, the starting shooting guard that plays most of the minutes and shoots most of the shots, his role's pretty clear. He gets it. He's the number one offensive weapon. The team needs him to score points to win. But what about the backup point guard that doesn't play a whole lot? Yeah, it might be a little unclear to him. Where does he fit in? Why is he even important? Why should he sacrifice his time and his effort and his blood, sweat, and tears to come to every practice and every workout and every film session? Like, why is that important? And the coach needs to be able to articulate that and clarify that. And then the next is, once you actually have this outcome, you can't live there. Now you got to focus on the process of what it'll take to get there. We get, I believe, as a society, too attached to the outcomes. Okay, so you want to win a championship. I get it. I mean, first of all, to clue you in, so does every other team in your conference. Everyone has the exact same goal. So it's not the goals that's going to separate us. It's going to be the behavior and the process and the habit that will achieve that goal. So that's where we should put most of our focus. I mean, at the start of any season, every NBA team has the same goal, to win an NBA championship. And, one of them will do so, 29 of them won't. And for the most part, and I'm not disregarding talent and some other factors, but the group that lives in the daily process the most consistently and the most efficiently and effectively has the best chance to make that happen.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing, I don't know if you see this or agree with this, but I know I made the mistake when I was a young coach. I was great at being transparent and confrontational to a point of giving people their roles. But I think one common mistake that I know I made, and once again, if you see this or not, is I stopped there. So it was November. Here's your role, Alan. Hey, you're going to be the backup. You're going to play 10 minutes a game. And I thought, well, I'm doing this guy a favor. But roles also change, do they not? They could increase, they could decrease. Is that something that you see is happening as well?
Well, absolutely. I mean, from internal and external factors. One, I wouldn't want any player on my team to be completely content with their role. I would want my backup point guard to say, whoa, I want to be the starter. And I would welcome that. And I would want to be able to say, at present, here's what I see your role being. You're going to play 10 minutes a game and you're going to back up Johnny. However, if you want to expand your role, earn more minutes, and have a chance to start, here are the things that I need you to do. I need you to become a better free throw shooter. I need you to become a better defender, and I need you to communicate with more of a presence. If you can do those three things, you'll start to earn more time. And then as you earn more time, if you play well, then you'll have a chance to start. So I want every player to accept and embrace their current role while they work to expand their role within the confines of the team. And then the external factor would be, if your starting point guard is academically ineligible or breaks his ankle, everybody's role just changed. Right. Now the backup point guard's role in one break of an ankle just changed to being the starter. And then everybody else's role will change. Now whoever was the third string point guard now becomes the backup point guard or however you have it defined. So there's so many factors. So role clarity should be a constant dance. It should not be a one time I've declared it and I'll see you next season. We should be checking in constantly. And if any part of you as a coach has the intuition and feels like your player or your employee, because it works in business also, doesn't have great clarity over their role, then it's your job to make sure that you reestablish that.
Yeah, well said. I like that dance. I should have had that a long time ago, but I think that's something that it's not being done as much in businesses, at least from my perspective. And another great point you made up here in Buckeye Land, Cardell Jones was preparing for however long, back in whenever that was, 14 or 15, and he's brought in the Big Ten championship, and then they went on to the Final Four. Had he not been prepping that whole time, not knowing when his moment was coming, we might not be talking about that. So definitely a valid point. And I don't know if this one is more business specific, but nonetheless, I know it's good for everyone to hear about, and you can make it applicable. But that skyrocketing your sales performance, you talk about this some, and just how to utilize these mindsets and these rituals and these routines of these world-class performers. I can't wait to hear what you have to say about this one.
Well, I believe the number one thing all of us can do to improve our performance and our mindset is learn to be in the present moment. And this kind of piggybacks nicely on what we were saying about giving someone your full attention, because in order to do that, you have to be fully present. And being fully present, to use a term I had heard from Nick Saban, is to be where your feet are. So it just means if your feet are in the room, make sure your head and your heart are in the room as well. If your feet are at practice, make sure you're entirely at practice. And this is where the digital distractions can get in our way, because you and I might physically be together, but mentally I'm somewhere else. I'm focused on my email or on the next tweet that I'm going to send. So it's important that we learn to be where our feet are. And being in the present moment is the only way we can absolutely maximize our performance. And when you can learn to be in the present moment, and many elite athletes have attested to this, it's like everything else slows down. You're not concerned with the play that just happened. You're not worried about the turnover you just made. You're not concerned with the future. You're not worried about winning and losing in the first quarter. You're just focusing on, can we get the best shot possible on this offensive possession? Or can we make them take the worst shot possible on this defensive possession? And then more importantly, what is my role in that? Because in basketball, I'm only one of 5 players. So what do I need to do on this offensive possession to give us the best chance to score? Maybe it's set a screen. Maybe it's make a backdoor cut. Maybe it's actually take my man off the dribble and go to the basket. But that's where we have to have that mindset. And being in the present moment also means that you just focus on what you have control over, which is your own attitude and your own effort. You really block everything else out. You don't focus on anything else except for the parts that you have control over. And if you can have that next play mentality and you can focus on the things that you have control over, then mentally you're in a place where you can perform at your highest level. And this would be true in sales. This would be true in basketball.
See, what I'm going to do more so than anything with this afterwards is teach this to my 3 boys, because these are some of the things I'm already saying, Alan, but it's nice when somebody else says it, right? I think a quality attribute, especially the older I get, the more that I have a little bit more appreciation for habits rather than goals. And I think that, I know you have a quote with this, I think that's at Penn State. I know one of your habits is meditating. I see that. And what are some other things that you've built into your life, or some habits that you see really allow you to rise up, if you will?
Well, one important thing to think about when we're talking about habits and performance is, we have the list of the things that we do, but an equally important list is the things that we don't do and we choose not to do, because those things would undermine performance or sabotage our ability to be our best. So we always want to make sure that we look on both sides of the coin. But by definition, a habit is anything that we do unconsciously and we do it consistently. Basically, we can be on cruise control and we'll still do these things. And we want to fill our bucket with as many positive habits as possible, because everything we do affects everything else that we do. You can't compartmentalize excellence. You can't say, I want to be the best basketball player I can be, but then slack off in your relationships and slack off in your schoolwork. Now, I want to make sure I'm crystal clear. I'm not saying that you can't be a good basketball player if you slack off in other areas. Clearly, we've seen some NBA players that have had great careers, and we've seen that they've had very poor habits in other areas of their life. What I'm saying is you can't be the best that you're capable of being, and that's what's most important. So excellence is not a light switch that we turn on and off, which means the little things matter. How you do anything is how you do everything. You can't just show up for practice and give your best effort and think that's enough. You need to get plenty of sleep. You need to eat well. You need to get in practice above and beyond, in those unseen hours. You need to study film. You need to be open and coachable. You need to take care of your body and your mind. Like, you have to do all of that if you want to be the best player you can be. And once again, that's why this stuff has such high utility. Because if you want to be the best entrepreneur or CEO or sales professional, you have to do the exact same type of stuff. That the X's and O's will change, but the principles don't. So you need to create habits that align with you being the best at your craft that you can be.
Yeah, that's great. What about you personally, Alan? What are some things what inspires you? What motivates you? Your why to everything that you're doing?
I really enjoy pouring into other people. I mean, I'll always consider myself a coach at heart and a servant leader, someone that wants to, I always say, fill other people's buckets. And this actual COVID-19 reminded me of that, because it really reminded me that speaking is what I do. It's not who I am. At present, I'm not able to get on stages and be in front of people because of the social distancing. But that doesn't mean that I can't still fill people's buckets. That doesn't mean I can't still have calls like this with you and share with your audience, so I've just had to find some other ways. But doing these types of things is what motivates me and fills my bucket and charges me up. So everything that I do is working to be able to provide something of value to help other people improve their performance. I mean, really, it comes down to performance and not on a surface level. I found that performance is directly related to our self-belief and our self-confidence. That when we perform at a higher level, we feel better about ourselves. And when we feel better about ourselves, then we can perform at an even higher level. And the higher our performance goes and the higher our confidence goes, the happier and the more fulfilled we are. And when you're performing at a high level and you're happy and fulfilled, that's my definition of success. I know everybody determines success differently. You know, some people think success means you have to have won the championship to have had a successful season. I don't believe that. I think if a team came as close to maximizing their potential as possible and they enjoyed the ride and they did everything they could to be the best they could be, even if they finished 500, I would consider that a successful season because they might only have 500 level talent. Yeah, right. And that's really important. Same thing in business. You know, some people would put a monetary figure to it and say, well, that person's successful. And I don't believe that. I think success is a combination of happiness and performance. And that's why what I want to do is help folks improve those things because those things are important to me. And when I can light someone else's candle, that makes me feel good.
Yeah, good stuff. Hey, I kind of finished with a rapid fire. I call 3-pointers, but before we do that, I just want to talk about this book. You know, and what made you want to write this? Kind of where did all that start with?
Well, there are actually 3 reasons I wanted to write the book. The first was it was kind of a professional bucket list item. I've been a voracious reader ever since college, and I have a very strong respect and appreciation for books and for authors. And I could list a handful of books that changed my perspective and my philosophy on life. You know, that I read something and I saw the world differently after I read that. And I thought, man, if I could contribute something that could help someone or get them to see something a little bit different, that would be a really cool thing to do. So the very first reason was professional bucket list. The second reason was I wrote it at the time I was just entering the corporate keynote speaking world, and writing the book forced me to get hyper organized and crystal clear on my message and my content. You know, being able to organize all of my stories and lessons and thoughts really helped me as a speaker. I still say to this day that if I never even published the book, if it was sitting on my computer right now and no one else saw it, it still would have been worth writing because it got me really organized with my message. And then the last reason was I wanted to use it to leverage some credibility in the corporate world because I didn't have any at the time. You know, I'd spent my whole life in basketball and was just starting to build up some credibility in basketball. And then I made the leap over to an area where I had no brand recognition and no credibility. And I thought a book would help with that. And it has done that because lots of times someone reads the book and then says, man, we'd love for you to deliver this message to our team. And, you know, they see the book and being an author, making me a credible resource in that. So for those 3 reasons, writing the book was one of the best things I've ever done professionally.
Good to hear. What did you think you learned? What did you learn the most from it? That whole process or just the book in general?
Well, the first thing I learned, well, a couple things. One, it reminded me how fortunate I've been in my life to have had so many amazing opportunities and meet so many amazing people and go to so many amazing places like Jamaica, and how fortunate I've been to have been mentored and had other people pour into me. Because for the most part, even though the vast majority of the book is coming from my vantage point and my perspective, it's all stuff that was taught to me or shared with me. Somebody poured it into my cup, and the book is nothing more than me pouring it into someone else's cup. So it gave me a tremendous sense of appreciation and gratitude for sure. And I think the other one is it reminded me to stay in my lane and do what I do well. And the reason I say that is I hired a co-author to help me with the book because I hired someone that was actually a professional writer because I'm not a writer. I'm a coach, and I think for a coach, I can write fairly well, but that's not my strong suit. So I didn't want to put out a mediocre book because I wanted to do everything. I said, look, I've got some great ideas. I've got some good stories. I've got some content, and I wanted a professional writer to help me organize it and formulate a template and be able to put that out in a way that would be most helpful to people. So hiring and I would just call him an assistant coach, was one of the best things that I did because it allowed me to focus on content and not worry about things like grammar or structure or it taught me to stay in my lane. And right now, you know, I have a team, even though I'm a professional speaker, which most people would consider a one-man dog and pony show, I have an entire team of people that help me so that they can handle all of the logistics and flights and social media scheduling and negotiating contracts, doing all of that so that I can just focus on the craft of speaking, because that's what I want to do and that's what I believe I'm best at. So by each of us staying in our lane and playing our position, and each of us just being our own puzzle piece, when you put the whole thing together, then we've got a pretty special collage.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess the last thing about the book, I would just like to bring up the point that I think it can benefit a lot of people, right? I mean, you can speak to it here, but there, whether it's coaches, whether it's teams, whether it's businesses, whether it's teachers, it seems to be very applicable in anybody's life.
Yeah, and I wrote that very intentionally because I knew, that I was leaving a community of being with basketball players and coaches, and I will forever be indebted to the coaching community. So I didn't want to leave them in the rearview mirror. I wanted to write something that I knew would serve every player and every coach on the planet. But at the same time, I wanted to make sure that I was serving my new audience, which would be business professionals and folks in the corporate world. So I wanted to make sure that I wrote something that both camps would be able to draw from. And there's sports analogies and stories in there that someone from business can learn from. And there's business analogies and stories in there that coaches and players can learn from. So it's also the lesson of don't just study your specific industry or sport. Step outside of that and look to learn from as many different people as possible in as many different ways as possible. So I wanted to be very, very deliberate in writing it for both of those distinctly different audiences.
Well, I know as we go for this rapid fire, and if you got to go a little longer on these, that's fine. But these 3-pointers, I know you could probably shoot it well, especially taking on your kids in the backyard now, not letting them win. So, first thing, if anybody could learn something, or just really one thing, one thing from this talk, what would you want them to be to grab hold on to it?
Have a strong appreciation and respect for the basics and the fundamentals. That find a way to fall in love with the boring.
Yeah, that's good. Next thing, if you could have stepped in my shoes and asked the questions, what's one question that I didn't ask that I should have asked today?
Oh, I thought you've done a phenomenal job. You've done a great job as an interviewer because you've lobbed me some softballs and kind of let me do my thing, which I greatly appreciate. And, I believe, that's the sign of a consummate teammate. I have my own podcast where I interview other people, and sometimes it's challenging because, as the guest on your show, it's my job to share content. It's my job to share things that will help your listeners. When I'm actually doing the interview, it's my job to tee up the other person so that they can do that. And it took some practice because I found myself talking on my own podcast way more than I should have. So I think you've done a masterful job. I wouldn't change a thing.
I appreciate it. And that's the hard thing too, is I want to sit down here and jot notes and learn and get better. Last thing, just calling this good stuff, is just something I've always said. And whether it's for this time or just in general, what's some good stuff you could leave us with?
Kind of like a parting thought.
Yeah, that'd be great.
As I've gotten older, I've really tried to simplify my life. I'm a big believer that complexity can actually be a demotivator, that when you make things too complex, and this as a coach, the more simple you can make your instructions, the more likely your players will follow them. And you can draw up the most elaborate play in the world, but if they can't follow it and execute it, then it's worthless. And one of the things I've really adopted over these last few years, so I'm 44 years old, and I have this vision of who I want to be 20 years from now. Who do I want the 64-year-old Alan to be? Well, without going into too much detail, I want the 64-year-old Alan to be physically, mentally, and emotionally fit. I want the 64-year-old Alan to have a wonderful relationship with his children, with his family, with his friends, with his colleagues. I want the 64-year-old Alan to be doing what he considers meaningful work that's in service of other people. And that's just loosely what I want to be in 20 years. So to make my life simple, every decision I make in my life, I run through a binary filter of, will doing this take me closer to being that guy, or will it take me further away? And it could be something as simple as, what am I going to eat for dinner, or who am I going to follow on Instagram? But I want to make sure that every decision I make is going towards the direction of becoming that guy. And I recognize that time is not promised, that there is no guarantee that I'll make it to see 64 years old. But if I do, I'm very confident that I will become that person because the habits and routines and daily disciplines that I have are in alignment with that. Now, with that said, I'm fallible just like everyone listening to this. I'm not batting 1,000. I make a handful of decisions every day that probably are not in alignment with being that guy, but more times than not, and pretty consistently, I do, which means inevitably I'm kind of in control of dictating my own future. Because notice, I didn't say anything there that's a result of what other people do. I didn't say that what I want to do is dependent on the economy or dependent on who's president or dependent on where I live. I'm in control of my physical, mental, and emotional fitness. I'm in control of my relationships with my children and friends. I'm in control of what I do for a living and if I find meaning in my work. So there's really no one that can prevent me from doing those things except for myself. So I just want to make sure that the decisions I make are in alignment with that and that I own every decision. And if I make a decision that's not in alignment, that's going against the grain, then I have to own that and learn from that and then make a better decision next time.
Yeah, amen to that. I think the control thing is so big. It's something that's a philosophy in my life. And Alan, I want to thank you for being on here. But before we go, I know the book. You've got a great website. You're all over social media. Let's let people know where they can find you, please.
Oh, absolutely. No, this was a real pleasure. I had a great time. If you're interested in the book, you can go to raiseyourgamebook.com, or you can pick it up on Amazon. Or if you love my smooth, sexy voice and you want to hear me read the book, you can pick it up on Audible or iTunes. And if there's any coaches or executives listening, if you want to buy in bulk for your entire team, you can just email me at alan@alansteinjr.com and I can give you a 42% discount and I can even sign every copy. And then everything else you can find at alansteinjr.com. And I'm at Alan Stein Jr. on all of the major social channels like Instagram. I love engaging with people. So if someone listening, if something struck a chord and you want to continue this discussion or even debate something that I said, just drop me a line on social media and we can continue this dance.
Yeah, that's awesome. I appreciate it. And it was good catching up. Going to continue to hopefully stay in touch with you, Alan. I appreciate everything that you're doing out there. I know you're impacting a lot of people and a lot of teams and a lot of businesses, and just continue to do what you're doing because it's great. And I can't thank you enough for the time on here today.
Absolutely my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so it was great here. I hope everybody enjoyed it as much as I did, and I look forward to hearing from what people think about what Alan said today, and once again how you can make this applicable in your life. So until next time, good stuff.